So Saints earned a decent point at Old Trafford in a cracking 0-0 draw, if there can be such a thing. But it could have been much, much more. Plenty of talking points. Glenn, going to start with you this week. United were there for the taking today, especially having gone down to 10 men. Are you disappointed that it wasn't more than a point?
Lots of ways of looking at it, isn't there? I feel that if this had been earlier on in the season, I'd be much more happy with the fact that we got a point at the end of the day. A point at Old Trafford is never a bad thing. But having got ourselves into the hole that we have got ourselves into, it was a good opportunity to get 3. Having said that, the last time we played against 10 men for any length of time against Wolves, we were diabolical, and we managed to throw a 1-0 lead in that game and lose. And at least in this game, we maintained our attacking intent for more or less the whole 95 minutes. So haven't really got too much to complain about with regards to the end result. We just lacked a bit of quality in the final third. I think if we'd have got it together even once, obviously we've hit the woodwork a couple of times with Prowse's free kick and Walker-Peters' shot that hit the post. But I only really remember a couple of saves from De Gea, the 2 from Walcott. So we didn't really work the goalkeeper enough. And though you could say Sulemana, Walcott, Adams, they all had decent games, we just didn't quite work the keeper. Charlie Alcaraz, I thought did some good things, and he seemed to have a bit of a ropey touch today on a number of occasions, like maybe he wasn't fully fit. And the fact that he only lasted sort of 50 minutes or so maybe suggests that. Mind you, getting his shin stamped on by Casemiro probably didn't help either. So, yeah, overall, we take a point, we take the clean sheet, and we move on. But it is a little bit of an opportunity missed.
Were you disappointed, Steve, that it wasn't 3 points at the end there?
I mean, same as Glenn, really. In that, I mean, sure, we could have had 3, but we could easily have ended up with none. Bazunu's made that cracking save from Fernandes in the second half, where, I mean, at the end of the day, let's be honest, 6 weeks ago, that almost certainly ends up in the back of the net. And I mean, also that far ago, we'd have got absolutely hammered in that game. So yeah, it's a good point. Going to Old Trafford, clean sheet against a team that's, I mean, last weekend aside, has been in excellent form for a good few months now. They've basically been the third best team in the league comfortably. I mean, arguably second, given that Man City have been a little bit up and down, I think. So yeah, you go away to them where they've had a really strong home record, and you don't let them score. That's a positive. And it wasn't as if we camped on the edge of our area and just said, right, we're gonna defend this. Can you break us down? We were always looking to try and get on the front foot, which was good to see. It wasn't like, even the substitutions when we made them, they weren't. While I mean, people will have their opinions on Armstrong and Mara coming on yet again, but at least they were actually involved in things this time, and it didn't affect the kind of team ethos, if you like, of how we were trying to kind of play the game. We were still trying to be quick on the counter attack. We were still trying to press them in certain areas and win the ball quite high up. And actually, I think Adam Armstrong's quite good in a system when you're trying to do that. He's got plenty of energy, and he's got that little burst of pace that can surprise defenders at times. But yeah, it's one of those games where, again, a little bit of extra quality, maybe slightly better decision making. Some of our crosses, when we got into good positions, weren't quite where they needed to be. And ultimately, with the personnel we've got, you've got to be pretty precise at the moment, I think, unfortunately, and we weren't quite at it in that sense. But no, I mean, it's a point at Old Trafford, and I think realistically, I think a lot of the reaction I've seen where people have said, "Oh, we really should have won that," or "We needed to win that," is kind of a little bit in hindsight, only because of Bournemouth's win over an absolutely pathetic Liverpool yesterday. Whereas if Liverpool had gone to Dean Court yesterday and won that game, and we then go to Old Trafford and get a point, everyone says, well, that's a bonus, and we've pulled a point away from them. So yeah, it's just there's a bit of context to it, but at the end of the day, if we go and beat Brentford on Wednesday, that's 7 points in 3 games, and all of a sudden everything's looking relatively positive again.
Things are looking up.
I think it's important that we've strung together 2 decent performances, because we've struggled to do that all season, and now the challenge is to take that on. We've got 2 home games coming up. If we can maybe win one and draw one of those, then suddenly it's looking like we are the sort of team that can put a run together. Because there's been so many times this season where we've been like a flatlining patient who suddenly has a little blip and everyone goes, oh yeah, here we go, and then it's boo again, back to flatline, and it's all fallen away again. So to get 2 decent results and 2 games unbeaten, I guess, is decent. So
and clean sheets as well.
And clean sheets,
well.
yeah. We'll get on to breaking down the game in just a minute. Obviously, Alfie and Jacob would normally be joining us, but they're currently heading back from Manchester. So I'm pleased to say that one of our patrons, Phil Cook, is going to jump on tonight and join us on the pod. Hi, Phil. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. After a few technical errors my side, so apologies for being late.
No, it's good to have you with us. We're just talking about the result today. We haven't got into the nuts and bolts of the game yet, but pleased with the point today. Do you think it could have been more?
I think it probably should have been more. And to Glenn's point earlier, in the hole that we're in at the moment, we can't afford to let these chances slip by. I think I echo the frustrations that had we had this team, this manager, this structure in place 5, 6, 7, 8 games ago, I don't think we'd be in the bottom 3, and I think we actually probably would be looking further up the table rather than down. But all in all, I think we'd have taken it before the game, but the way things panned out, that's an opportunity missed.
I kind of want to break it down into the sort of the defensive performance and then the attacking performance, because that's 7 points from Sellers' 4 games in the league, 3 clean sheets, I think, and from those 4 too. It seems like, Glenn, he solved the problem at one end, which ironically Nathan Jones was brought in to do and didn't seem to be able to. But it seems that we can keep a clean sheet now, and we look a bit better at the back, which is good, and there's some positives around that.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it was. I was pleased for Bazunu today, because he had a game where he didn't look. I don't think there were any sort of dodgy moments at all. Whereas even when we beat Leicester last week, there was a couple of dodgy moments, wasn't there? But but today, I thought he was excellent. And whilst he probably wasn't tested that much, what he did looked very competent, and that'll be good for him, because I think we've all been waiting for him to be replaced in the team for probably 4, 5, 6 weeks, and he does seem to have turned a little bit of a corner. So hopefully that's the way of it. I mean, we have to talk about our good mate Yanni B, don't we? Because he the last 4 games he's been bad, good, and he's strung together 2 decent games in a row now. He was decent again today, so. And he does seem to have improved his attitude a little bit as well, with regards
stop moaning about everyone around him.
Yeah, absolutely. And he seems to be.
And Ruben Sellers this week was talking about him as a leader and saying that I very much lean on him, and he's got the experience that perhaps we were lacking. So kind of bigging up his part in the squad a bit.
Yeah, is he though? Not totally sold on all of that, but. You don't necessarily have to be a sort of chest pumping leader, but yeah, just not being a moany pain in the butt is a good start. And he's, anyone can get rid of that, apart from Bruno Fernandes, obviously. Anyone can get rid of that side of things just with a little bit of thought. And he maybe the penny's dropped with Bednarek that he can actually help these youngsters that he's got around him. And Bella-Kotchap, I think, has been he's been really good, because he just has that little bit of pace that he's probably I imagine he's the quickest out of our centre halves over 10 yards or whatever. I mean, I still think Bella-Kotchap and Salisu would be the better pairing. But whilst if Bednarek can keep stringing these games together, he deserves to stay in the team. And it looked more balanced today, having Perrault playing. as well. That's another thing. I mean, we were talking about the crossing earlier on. I mean, the best cross of the game was Perro's one, which he clipped in for Walcott's header. Now, if we'd have had a right-footed player out there like we have tended to do, that cross wouldn't have come in, and that could easily have been the winning goal. So you need those sort of fine margins. So I much prefer seeing a left-footed player at left back. And but I mean, the other thing, of course, is we seem to have settled now, last couple of games anyway, on this formation where you have Ward-Prowse and Lavia sitting in front of the two centre backs. And if you go back to the recent Saints sides that were decent, I know Steve's spoken about this before, where go back to Wanyama and Schneiderlin, having two players who really know what their roles are sitting in front of the two centre backs, it just makes things so much better. And we seem to be working harder now as well. I know it's Walcott and Suleiman are both working really hard at our possession. So that's it's all good stuff, and it all helps. And if I mean, keep the same defence. There's no reason to change it at the moment, as long as everyone keeps performing.
It looks like Steve Maitland-Niles might have picked up an injury yesterday or a knock in training, which may or may not have been why Perot came in. We don't know whether he was down to start anyway. But did that seem like our best back five, if you include the goalkeeper today? Does it feel like we now know what the benchmark is?
Well, they've put 2 clean sheets together against teams that haven't struggled to score goals this season. So, yeah, I would say so at the moment. I mean, I largely agree with Glenn in that I think Salisu and Bella-Kotchap long term might end up being our best 2 centre backs. But at the moment, Bednarek does have a few years' experience on him. I mean, arguably it's a few years of being in a bad back four, but we are where we are. But yeah, I mean, perhaps Maitland-Niles, if he's picked up a knock, perhaps that's actually quite timely. I mean, as much as you don't want players getting injured, and Maitland-Niles hasn't been atrocious by any stretch in that position in the last few games. We just look so much more balanced when we've got Perro on the left and Walker Peters on the right. And I thought Walker Peters was outstanding today.
Yeah, really good.
Particularly in an attacking sense as well, because just the energy that he's got. He was still making that run in the 94th minute when we're trying to break out and get away, and he's still got the sort of the energy in the tank to be able to do that, which is excellent. And it's something that we've, like, a lot of games where we've just looked completely lifeless after sort of in the last 20 minutes or so. I mean, arguably last week, where we kind of almost sacrificed any sense of bothering to try and get beyond our own halfway line. You don't have an outball in that sense. And actually, today we had a number of different outballs, because you had, I mean, even late in the game, you had Adam Armstrong, you had Stu Armstrong, you had Walker Peters, you had Walcott until he was subbed off. And those were all kind of outlets that were giving us kind of pacey options. And United are kind of, I mean, they're not slow, but they're also not the fastest through the middle. At fullback, they've got pace, so they're quite well covered there. But through the middle against Martinez and Varane, they're both great defenders, but they're not necessarily the quickest, and they can clearly be got at, as we showed sort of fairly regularly, I think, today. So yeah, having that balance, and which also then provides us with the sort of balanced, sort of wide attacking options as well. I think that's just got to be the way forward, for the rest, at least for the rest of the season.
And it looks also feel like the midfield seems to be settled too. The 3 look really well established. I think Alcaraz was a bit of a problem for United. Lavia was running the game at times. The key is going to be keeping those two fit and making sure they don't get too carried away when they celebrate goals.
Yeah, definitely that. Hopefully they get the chance to all celebrate some goals. It'd be nice to see that. Yeah, well, it'd be nice to see that part be added to our game as well. It's good to see the defensive structure get better over time. 3 clean sheets in 4 games, can't argue. And I think, to your point, the midfield 3 seems settled. And I wonder whether the whole team just feels a bit more settled because, as Ruben stated when he first took over, it's like having that core of 7, 8, 9 players that will play week in, week out and get familiar with each other in a familiar system. Like that breeds confidence. And I feel like we were just chopping and changing way too much over the course of the season. So Ward-Prowse and Lavia picked themselves, and I think Alcaraz has really thrown his hat in the ring to start the next few games in a row, assuming he stays injury free.
It's interesting, the debate around the 7 or 8 players. We would have probably failed to agree if you go back a couple of months, certainly at the start of the season. I don't even think that the staff perhaps knew, but it does seem a bit more nailed on now. Glenn, the problem again is still going forward, that glorious chance for Theo Walcott today. The thing is, and I thought about this afterwards, you wouldn't want anyone else having that chance, because if Che Adams has that chance, Armstrong has that chance, Mara has that chance, they're all going to fluff their lines. Theo's the best hope we've got, and he still put it straight at the keeper. So it's that's still the problem, isn't it? That we didn't resolve when we did, and when we should have done.
That's been our issue since day one of this season. You know, we went into this season with striking options of Adam Armstrong, and Sekou Mara. So, and we've signed Sulemana, who's not at the moment delivered in terms of goals and assists. He's, some bright play, but there's been not much end product. You got Sam Edozie, who's the same. Again, look bright without actually, sticking the ball in the net. And we've signed Tall Paul, and we don't seem to know how to use him. He came on again today. I don't think we didn't put one ball for him to compete for in the air, and he's playing against a 5'9" centre half. So, it's we haven't really fixed the problems. We've signed Onuachu, but he doesn't look. It's a problem with changing manager twice in the season. We've signed a player that was maybe going to fit the way Nathan Jones wanted to play, but it doesn't look like he's going to get a run of games now. So we're left with what we've got, which is more or less what we started the season with. So we've just got to hope that maybe Alcaraz fires into life and can get the others around him to. I think Che Adams will score a few if he gets presentable opportunities. He's going to miss them. He's going to miss a few because he always does. But I do feel like he's probably the most reliable out of the players who look like they're going to play between now and the end of the season. But we've just got to keep working at it. And another thing today is that Prowse had 2 perfectly presentable free kicks, and normally with the sort of record he's got, you'd be expecting one of them to hit the net, and that's I know that's
gutted,
probably sounds the one that pinged
off to his knees when it pinged off the crossbar.
Yeah, one that pinged off the bar. But we, because of the way we are with the scarcity of goals we've got, we do rely on that, and I'm sure he'll be disappointed that he didn't get at least one of those on target.
And I did feel for you, Glenn, when the substitution board went up and it was Armstrong and Mara coming on again. And you were my first thought. Obviously he wasn't listening last week, although they were a little bit later. He did leave it a little bit later this week.
Yeah, he did leave it a little bit later. And as Steve said, they worked hard, but it's just when either of them have got the ball, I'm just waiting for them to give it away. And there was one right at the end where we were still flooding players forward. And Adam Armstrong had the ball out on the left, and he passed it behind whoever he was aiming at. And suddenly United have got a 4-on-4 break or whatever. And it's just like, you've killed us there, mate. It's so little quality on the pass. And I know he's playing with no confidence. But, come on, there has to be more than that. Just put it in the general direction of some of our players. It does my head in, but we don't have very many options. But I do wonder, Sam Edozie seems to have been consigned to the B team for the rest of the season. I'd much rather bring him on the left wing as the last 10-minute option. But it is what it is, and Adam Armstrong wasn't the reason that we only got a point today instead of 3. He comes on and he does the job to the best of his ability. But yeah, I'd like us to have better options than those 2. to me, to you.
With any luck, Steve. With any luck, Steve, we'll get a couple of wins, and this should just be one of those debates for the end of the season about the money that we've wasted on signings. But we were crying out for a proven goal scorer in January. We signed one, and then against 10 men with 30 minutes to go at 0-0, we're crying out for a goal, and he's still on the bench. Are we going to see a meaningful contribution from him, do you think, between now and the rest of the season?
I don't know. I mean, it's a weird one, isn't it? I mean, we've not really seen enough of him to know whether he's going to be able to hack it at this level. But we've also, I mean, as Glenn's kind of hinted at, that we've also seen plenty of our other options, and we know that they can't hack it at this level. So, you kind of left thinking, well, why not just try him?
Yeah.
I mean, he did. Like, I remember, like the Wolves game, he looked all right. He kind of bullied their defenders a little bit. He held the ball up. He won lots of flick-ons, and we got players around him. And
he played well at Chelsea as well.
Yeah, and so he's clearly got something about him. But this was like saying we've not put the ball into the box for him in the 5-10 minutes that he was on the pitch. I think I said this last week. We've put like 3 crosses into him. In his entire time with us so far, and he won one header, which he almost scored from at Stamford Bridge. So it's he's the sort of player you've kind of got to give him a chance eventually. But at the same time, we don't see what goes on in training. At Staplewood, it might be that he's shanking everything left, right, and centre, and Adam Armstrong is showing that he's the deadliest striker in the world, although he is training against our defence. So it's one of those you kind of take it in context. But yeah, I mean, you would imagine that Onuachu's got to be given an opportunity at some point. I wouldn't expect that to be Wednesday, to be honest, because I think Ben Mee had him in his pocket for 45 minutes. In the return game at
last month, wasn't it? It was only last month.
And yeah, I think that game is a game for it's probably a game for Adams, and playing the wide system that we've been looking quite useful at the last few games. Obviously, if things don't sort of start to turn and don't go particularly well, then you've obviously got the option to mix it up a little bit and go a bit more direct. And he gives us that option. But I mean, when you're in the situation where you just kind of need something to kind of spark us into life, he's kind of got the very obvious and raw kind of materials to do that. And it's a surprise he's not played more, but I think Spurs game, I think that's the one where they might target sticking him in there, because their defence looks a little bit ropey, a little bit sort of weak-willed, I think.
What did you make of the signings that came in, Phil? I mean, were you expecting more from them? Did you think that we've signed somebody, we paid a lot of money for them, and actually that solved the goal scoring problem? Are you surprised that we're still having these conversations a couple of weeks on?
Yeah, I think so. Like, for me, the transfer strategy seemed a bit confused. We seem to have signed a right back that no one wanted. And James Bree, no offence to him, I'm sure he's a nice lad, but doesn't seem to be up to the standards. Orsic, who knows what's gone on there? I'm not even good. I doubt we'll see him again this season. Probably lose him in the summer. And then you look at Sulemana, looks decent. Like, he's got some pace, he's got some tricks, and I think it will take him a bit of time to settle. But happy with his kind of contribution so far. Tall Paul's the one that's a bit of an anomaly, because it doesn't seem to fit the style that. Well, it certainly doesn't fit the style that Ruben wants to play now, which is probably why he's not playing. But he actually, from what I've seen of him, he looks like quite a decent player, like quite tidy with his feet, a bit like a Peter Crouch sort.
Just the height is deceptive, isn't it? You just assume they're not going to be so good on the ground.
Yeah, but you wonder whether the players, given his height, naturally just assume to ping it into his head, and maybe that isn't his preference and isn't the best way to play with him. And is that something they're learning in training? Or is it just a case of, needs must at the moment where we stick with tried and tested, albeit not tested and passed, like Adams, where at least we know he might take 1 in 3, whereas Paul's a bit of an unknown still. So I think it's a mixed bag. Like it's a confusing set of signings that don't seem to. Yeah, we'll probably lose 3 or 4 of them in the summer with a clear out and a tidy up.
Yeah, and let's hope we don't lose too much money on them. A couple of incidents I just want to clear up before we move on. I've noticed, Glenn, do you want to take the red card first of all? I've noticed a lot of Manchester United fans piling in on social media saying there was no way that was a red card. Some broadcasters as well that support.
Okay, I got one question for everyone. Where did he connect with his shin?
Halfway up his leg.
Exactly. So that's it. I know he brushed the ball first, and 10 years ago they'd have probably said, "Oh, look, he touched the ball there. It's not a red card." But at the end of the day, he's gone in with a straight leg. He was sort of launching in, and though he's brushed the ball, it was kind of similar to the Bruno Guimaraes one up at Newcastle, where he's kind of got a little tiny bit of the ball, but he's ended up connecting with the player just below the knee. Nothing to see here. Move on. I mean, I saw Ten Hag's interview, which was just pathetic, I thought. And, and he was trying to use the defence that Casemiro's played 300 games in Spain or whatever and never been sent off. And now he's been sent off twice. Well, if you stamp on someone's shin and grab someone round the throat, you deserve to get sent off twice. So, put your big boy pants on and accept it. He's got a 4-game ban. And, if he learns to stay on his feet, and Ten Hag may want to wonder why he was flying into tackles, it's because he picked Bruno Fernandes next to him, so he had to cover all the space that he was leaving. So I'm sorry, I'm not having it. I'm not having it from any United fans saying it wasn't a red card, because it clearly was. Move on.
Good. Put that one to bed. And Steve, Ten Hag also in his press conference afterwards saying that he felt the Bella-Kotchap handball was clear and obvious and they should have had a penalty. That's not right either, is it?
I mean, he's blind if he's saying that's clear and obvious. Because I don't think even after about 2 or 3 replays, I don't think anybody could properly make out whether it had even hit his arm. I mean, from one replay, it looks like he's obviously slipped over and the ball has possibly hit his thigh and bounced up. In which case, if it's hit his thigh and bounced up onto his arm, that's not a handball by the current laws, because think back to Matty Cash, that ridiculous one that we didn't get because it bounced off his thigh, even though he was trying to handball it. It didn't count. I mean, it's just absolute nonsense. And I mean, Ten Hag flailing wildly in the last week after basically getting completely rattled by Liverpool turning it on and his team collapsing into the sort of horrible mess that they've been in the last 9 years since Fergie retired. Seems to have just made him go absolutely mental in the last week or so. Basically, everyone's been piling praise on him for the way that he's got this rabble, this expensively assembled rabble, let's remember, into some sort of functioning team that's capable of potentially challenging for a title next season. And all of a sudden he seems to have just lost the plot after 2, one terrible result and one, at the end of the day, you've had a man sent off after half an hour and you've not managed to score. Big deal. You didn't lose the game, move on.